Hello all. So this is a previous 15 marker on material deprivation. It came up in 2018. And for the 15 markers, you have no choice. So for the big 35 marker essay debate, you get a choice of two. You get two questions that are 35 markers and you choose your favorite. The 15 marker, you have to answer. So as I say, this came up in 2018. And it's worth you all noting that you have 18 minutes to answer a 15-mark question. It says using sociological evidence and examples. Explain the influence of material deprivation on attainment in education. Attainment, they use this word a lot. Attainment just means achievement in education. So the influence of material deprivation. So basically poverty. What influence or impact does poverty or material deprivation have on attainment or achievement in education? You're assessed on two skills in a 15 marker. AO1 is knowledge. Do you know sociological names? Do you know terms or concepts? So do you know symbolic violence? Do you know habitus? Do you know Bourdieu? Do you know Althusser? So AO1 is knowledge. The second skill you're assessed on is AO2. And this is really application or analysis. The way you show an examiner that you are doing analysis is you must use the phrase, this shows. You can say this means, this shows, or this means, and then use the exact term of the question. So this shows, in this case, that material deprivation has an influence on attainment because. So we have to keep saying influence of material deprivation on attainment. This shows. If you're not doing this shows or this means at the end of each of the paragraphs, you won't be getting any AO2. You get 6 marks for AO2 and 11 for knowledge. So it has to be in every paragraph. Okay, so using sociological evidence and examples, explain the influence of material deprivation on attainment in education. Okay. For me, this is an okay question. I normally like them a bit broader than this. Material deprivation is a little bit narrow, but yeah, don't dislike material deprivation as a term to come up. So the first thing I'm going to do is note that material deprivation is the impact of poverty on attainment or achievement in education. Material deprivation is the impact of poverty on attainment or achievement in education. In 2018, 21% of free school meals pupils achieved a 5 in both English and maths. The national average was 46%. So material deprivation is the impacts of poverty on attainment or achievement in education. In 2018, 21% of free school meals pupils achieved a 5 in both English and maths. The national average was 46%. Material deprivation. Oh, sorry, I'm going to try and change that. The influence, because I'm trying to keep using the phrasing of the question. The influence of material deprivation can help explain this class inequality in education. It's basically the influence of material deprivation or poverty can actually explain that massive class inequality gap in education. So it's almost like a little mini introduction where I'm giving them the definition of material deprivation, and I'm highlighting that I know the knowledge, that I know the statistics of the inequality gap, and largely material deprivation explains that gap. In a 15, we always aim for 3 paragraphs. We normally try to aim for 3 sociologists in each paragraph. That's not going to be possible here. It's quite narrow. So I've got material deprivation is the impact of poverty, 21% versus 46, and the influence of material deprivation can explain this class inequality in education. So paragraph 1, I'm going to do Smith and Noble. So I know they talk about material deprivation. So Smith and Noble argue that material deprivation can cause they argue that material deprivation can cause poor quality housing, they argue that material deprivation can cause, material deprivation can take the form of poor quality housing with damp and overcrowding. It can cause poor diet, limited access to resources like books, computers, internet, and money for school trips. It can also put pressure on students to supplement family income with part-time employment. And this can affect studies through tiredness and a lack of time for homework and revision. So Smith and Noble argue that material deprivation can take the form of poor quality housing with damp and overcrowding. It can cause poor diet, limited access to resources like books, computers, internet, and money for school trips. It can also put pressure on students to supplement family income with part-time employment, and this can affect studies through tiredness and lack of time for homework and revision. Pupil premium is designed to address material deprivation. As money is provided to the school and this can be used to support learners. So Smith and Noble Little reference there, particularly to my first years. I know we haven't done policy yet, but pupil premium is a sum of money given to schools and is designed to address material deprivation, as it can be used to support learners. This money can be used to support learners. So, got my knowledge, got my names. I've got a little bit of policy there, and then I'm going to do the analysis. So this shows, I'm going to read the question, that material deprivation has an influence on attainment in education, as it can cause higher rates of sickness, due to poor housing, lower rates of concentration in lessons due to poor diet, and limited time or energy to complete vital homework and revision. The influence of material deprivation on attainment is that those learners will have higher rates of sickness generally due to poor housing, lower rates of concentration in lessons due to poor diet or not having had breakfast, and limited time or energy to complete vital homework and revision. And so underachieve as a result. That's the influence. The influence is why would they be underachieving, or the influence is they're underachieving because of these factors. So that's the analysis this shows. I've used the exact terms of the question and I've summarized the influence or impact that it's having. Okay. So, Smith and Noble, material deprivation. Forsyth and Furlong note that material deprivation can influence, because that's the question, material deprivation can influence further attendance in further or higher education. That's the influence. Material deprivation can influence the attendance for further or higher. Higher education is university, further is college really. So for Forsyth and Furlong, the most significant factor affecting the attainment, or affecting the most significant factor, deterring working class students from university was the cost. For Forsyth and Furlong, the most significant factor deterring working class groups from university was the cost. There's been a 21% reduction in university attendance from poorer backgrounds. So, One key influence is lack of concentration, homework, completion due to tiredness. Second is that material deprivation can influence attainment, because the most significant factor deterring working class students from university was the cost. Poverty can also put pressure on pupils to leave school at 16 and drop out of post-compulsory education. So, end of that paragraph. This shows material deprivation can have an influence. That's the question. This shows material deprivation can have an influence on attainment in education. Material deprivation can have an influence on attainment in education, as some groups are unable to attend or attain degrees because the cost of tuition fees is a deterrent. So it has an influence because some of them are unable to attend university, and so they won't attain. So I'm trying to link back to achievement or attainment, and won't attain degrees because of the cost of tuition fees is a deterrent and means they are unwilling or unable to move into further or higher education. Okay, so again, I've got this shows I'm using the phrasing of the question. You could note there as well, I know we haven't done policy yet for my first years, but you could note there as well that EMA, so educational maintenance allowance, again, was policy designed to encourage students from working class backgrounds to continue into further education. Just for those of you who've already done policy, you can touch on it there just to add a little bit more knowledge. Okay, paragraph 3. So material deprivation. Again, I'm going to keep reading the question. Material deprivation has an influence on attainment. In education due to catchment area. So, catchment areas are the areas that schools and colleges draw their pupils. So material deprivation has an influence on attainment in education due to the catchment areas. So catchment areas are the areas that schools draw their pupils. Schools in socially deprived areas. Schools in socially deprived areas. Schools in socially deprived areas. Where they have a range of social problems like high unemployment, poverty, and crime are more likely to have discipline problems and a higher turnover of teachers. So material deprivation has an impact on attainment. Catchment area of the areas that schools draw their pupils, and schools in socially deprived areas where they have a range of social problems like higher unemployment, poverty, or crime are much more likely to have discipline problems and a higher turnover of teachers. This leads, or this can lead, to poorer educational outcomes for pupils. The Sutton Trust notes that the Sutton Trust notes that the best, please put the little comments, the best performing schools are more socially selective and have 50% less pupils who are on free school meals. We be very careful with the word best, because although they may be rated outstanding, what the Sutton Trust is trying to highlight is they're generally rated to be the best schools, largely because the catchment area that they draw their pupils are very, very wealthy areas, potentially, or they're much more socially selective. So they can choose who attends schools, and those schools tend to have at least 50% of those pupils who don't have free school meals. So they don't have the material deprivation problems, which Smith and Noble, which we've talked about in paragraph 1. So catchment area and the Sutton Trust. So again, this shows we have to do analysis. This shows that material deprivation, read the question after every single time you do this, because you might start to veer away from it. This shows material deprivation, oh, there you go. So the influence, I've missed the influence. I've got to make sure I'm doing that. This shows the influence of material deprivation on attainment. It shows that material deprivation has an influence on attainment in education, because schools in more materially deprived areas may find themselves with a higher turnover of teachers as a result of larger class sizes. They may find themselves with a higher turnover of teachers as a result of larger class sizes and more issues with discipline. Due to the poverty and unemployment in the local areas. So a school might find themselves with a much higher turnover of teachers, and that's the influence of the material deprivation, because that area may have higher rates of unemployment and poverty. So again, you know, what we're trying to infer there is the child going to be able to concentrate if they haven't eaten breakfast, or if that breakfast isn't as nutritious and doesn't fill them up for as long, Or is a child going to concentrate on Pythagoras when actually they were just burgled last night? Or there's a court hearing taking place. There are other factors that school has to deal with if they're in a more socially deprived area. And again, not to mention just pure class sizes, 31 pupils versus potentially a school in a very wealthy area with more class sizes of about 18. Just the workload difference of those teachers is vast. That's why you have to be very careful about the word best performing. Yeah, there's other factors at play. So, material deprivation, 15 marker, 3 paragraphs, knowledge, so statistics, names, some explanation of their terms, and you must have this shows, which has to link back to the direct terms of the question. So in this case, the influence of material deprivation on attainment in education. Again, I've generally done this for both first and second years. So second years, be aware that, as I say, you can put pupil premium in paragraph 1. You can put some EMA in paragraph 2. Yeah, there isn't any really policy for paragraph 3. Any questions, as always, please do let me know, and I'll get back to you. Thank you.